My upgrades are invincible, Chapter 42, Fan Fiction, by Azazyel. 6 beings sat in a meeting room high in the Tower of Babel. On one side of the meeting table sat 3, the goddess Hera, her Familia captain Albion, and the goddess Hephaestus. On the other side of the table was the god Zeus, who was sitting with his own Familia captain, Maxim, a mountain of a man more than 7 feet tall and clad in gleaming armor that was covered in a lion pelt that sparkled with lightning. Lastly, acting as the unbiased intermediary was Freya, who was all but giddy at seeing the utterly stupid act that Maxim pulled in his desire to suppress the crafting Familius into forces he could order about as he pleased. To say nothing of how gleeful she was at seeing the Hera Familia drawn into the mess, as although Hephaestus had some bad blood from Hera from times back in Tenkai, here on Genkai, they had a good working relationship in which the ladies of the Hera Familia would get their gear from Hephaestus. And with the Hephaestus Familia expected to be slashed in half in numbers, to say nothing of Orario's demands for the arms of the one of 2 best Familias in Orario, but the Zeus and Hera Familia's contracts were obviously going to be expected to be indefinitely put off with the loss of so many smiths. Freya elegantly clapped her hands together to break the tense silence that was left as Hephaestus was staring daggers at the unflinching peak level 8 monster that was Maxim. Now. We are in the Tower of Babel, no smiting the mortal, Hephaestus. She made sure to warn the smithing goddess, who slowly nodded at the reminder that Auranas would give anyone who flickered their divinity here on the seal for the dungeon a swift boot back to Tenkai. Why are we even here? Maxim abruptly spoke, and Zeus covered his face as, from beneath the hood of the half-lion head covering his head, Maxim continued coldly. There are no reparations to be made, there will be no agreements or movements made to punish my Familia, and no one can challenge my rule. His fingers arced with arcane blue lightning as he tapped the marble table and left burnt scars across the table. You are weak, Hephaestus. Your Familia was weak. You don't have the strength nor will to strike me down to avenge this slight and be sent back to Tenkai to face eternal paperwork. The sound of rumbling thunder rang out, and for those in the know, they knew it was just Maxim just chuckling in his chest as he shook his head. Therefore, this meeting is utterly a waste of time, he said, standing up. Seeing Maxim standing up, Hera softly spoke. Zeus, what is your stance on this? Maxim actually paused to listen to his god, who sighed and shook his head. I do not direct my children. I simply give them goals to gain strength. I am not the villain of this epic. The giant chuckled loudly with lightning forming in his eyes under the shadow of the lion helmet as he retorted. Ha! I am the villain. When I crushed kingdoms underfoot, taking their princesses and queens as my concubines while slaying terrible monsters, didn't you applaud my actions, calling me a great hero? Maxim shook his head with clear mirth coming out of his voice as he left the room with one final statement. I am going to be the greatest hero in history. It doesn't matter the means used, but once I complete the 3 great quests, I will reach level 10 and become an immortal. Whatever means used in that goal will be forgotten in history. And with that, the door into the room closed behind the large man, leaving the now 5 to sit there and share a look. Hera sighed and then spoke bluntly. Zeus, will you wipe Maxim's fauna clean during an update? There was a moment of tense silence before Zeus shook his head and said with a wry smile. I took in Maxim as a boy. He has gone off the path, but he can be redeemed once he completes the great quests and kills those monsters. He then looked at Hephaestus and spoke sincerely. Hephaestus, I am sorry, and although that means nothing to you, I promise you I will make sure Maxim and his men stay away from your Familia, and Hafred's death will not be mentioned either. Freya, however, snorted as she retorted. Ho, so you walk off without a bruise while Orario basically loses one of its 2 first-class adventure smithing Familias. Zeus simply shrugged as he stood up, unable or unwilling to answer, while Hera coldly stared between Freya and Zeus as they prepared to leave the meeting room with no true resolution in sight. After the Norse goddess of beauty left just behind Zeus, obviously being unwilling to stay in a room with her enemy, Hera, the queen of the gods spoke slowly. Albion. Go check on the injured Hephaestus members, use your magic to heal them if possible. Left unspoken to Albion in front of Hephaestus was the order for Albion to go check on their Familia's investment. The investment that had supposedly been in the hands of Hephaestus had been charmed by Freya in order to save his life, supposedly with Zeus and Hephaestus both agreeing that Hephaestus would have snapped his neck should Freya not have mentally shattered Hephaestus' mind with her charm. Albion has to make sure that Freya didn't scramble his mind. To say nothing of whether he will even be an adventurer here in Rio after seeing Zeus's rabid dogs attacking civilians and his Familia members. Hera thought with a frown as she was well aware there were plenty of opportunities for adventurers outside of Rio, like Melon, which was controlled by the Poseidon Familia, which specialized in the subjugation of the side dungeon entrance that opened up in the massive Great Lake. And at this point, she wouldn't be surprised if Jake followed the many others who thought the current Rio simply wasn't worth dealing with Zeus and other arrogant Familia's antics. That couldn't be allowed. After all, she needed that special elixir for Althea and Materia. To say nothing of keeping a smith who could smith adamantine armor within Rio for her own Familia's needs.